What is up, ninjas? My name is Samworld, and today we are going to be getting into equalizers. I love them so much that I'm dedicating a video to them. Now, when it comes to EQs, I am racist. I like all kinds of EQs. I like paragraphic EQs, or whatever the hell we call them. I like SSL EQs, API EQs, car stereo EQ. I also like, the Walkman EQ. Whatever it is, that weird little moving thingy EQ, it's all there, guys. And today we're going to be learning tips that I learned from when I started producing, where I sucked at producing, to the point of now where I suck a little less, but I still suck hella good. Now, the biggest troubles we run into, guys, when we start to EQ in the mixing world is the fact that our whole lives have been adjusted to boosting everything in the car stereo so it sounds loud and powerful. If you ever had the option of increasing the treble and increasing the bass, you would literally be like, why not both? But that's not the case when making music, guys. You have to find balance in the sound. Think of EQing as the personal trainer to the fat guy in the gym. That personal trainer is gonna sculpt the crap out of the fat guy to make him look lean, to make him look however he wants. Maybe he wants a big butt. You can do that. That's what EQ is technically. You really are personalizing the fitness of a sound with the EQ. So these are gonna be my tips, guys, and I hope that you guys enjoy them. Tip number one, guys, is one that I've talked about in this channel, but yesterday I had a session with one of my students, and this tip came back to really help us, and that is gonna be the act of removing resonating frequencies. Now, resonating frequencies, the most common one that you guys know is the dreaded whistle. That's a resonating bass sound, because literally if you put a whistle through an EQ or a spectrum, you're gonna see one big line coming up. Now, these type of sounds, you do want to kind of EQ them down, but if you EQ them too much, you're gonna get rid of the vibe. So you gotta be careful when you're doing this. Now, when does this apply is the question. Well, resonating frequencies will be reduced when you feel like your sound just has too much, it's out of control in your song. You can do it on the master if you want, you can do it on individual sounds, you can do it on the lead bus, or you can do it every fucking damn time if you want, like some producers. It will give you a cleaner sound. So let me show you how to do this trick.
All right, guys, now welcome to my den, into the beauty of Ableton. All right, guys, so the first tip, we're gonna have this sound. So my question when you hear that sound is, what stands out? Well, if you heard the first tip and you were paying attention, you know that there's something resonating about it. So whenever we run into these sounds, you first have to literally make sure that you're dealing with a very resonating sound. Once we figure that out, we have to find the resonating frequencies by literally going up. Now, if you look at the EQ itself, literally, pull this up, you can see that there's a couple of frequencies that are just standing out like crazy. So we're gonna check those to see if they're resonating frequencies. Now, the bad resonating frequencies are gonna be really harsh, so we gotta be careful when we're doing this. So brace your ears. Let's get straight into finding them. First, we're gonna have a very high quadrant, which is gonna make it very thin like so. And then we're gonna go looking for them. Now, the main meat is gonna be around here. You can see how bad it sounds, so we're gonna reduce a bit. So turn it off. It's starting to sound a little bit cleaner, but let's keep going with it. So now we're gonna use a bell here, high quadrant, and find more of them. So that one is very nasty. Now let's find another one. And you kind of see the idea. All right, so we're gonna reduce a bit there. Let's try and find one more. Whoops. And let's see if we can get one more in here and see how that's gonna affect the sound. We're gonna reduce that one just a bit, even though it's not that harsh. Now, if we take it off, oversampling. But that's how that technique is going to work, and you can keep going with it. Now, some people choose to do it to every sound. Like I saw like a masterclass on Sonic Academy by Chimera, which is a techno producer. Didn't know who he was, but just wanted to learn a couple of things. And he did this to a lot of his leads, even though it wasn't needed. But he feels like it makes his mix sound a lot cleaner for sure. So definitely a technique to have up your sleeve if you feel like it's useful. You know, and if I put these up, you're gonna see how nasty these guys are. So tread carefully with this tip, but this is the first one.
So yeah, guys, resonating frequencies usually are going to be found in leads that sound good, but you just find something odd in them. It's, imagine my hair is all done nicely, but then there's this little piece in the back that just stays up and it won't go down. You can think of that as a resonating hair. That's what resonating frequencies are, and you got to look out for them. This tip doesn't have to be used all the time, but thread carefully with it and know when to use it, and you'll have your chances. I'll show you guys an example where I already did. Tip number 2, guys, and this might get me flagged on YouTube for the example I'm about to use, but pretty much you want to reduce rather than boost. So instead of wanting to make your wee look a lot bigger, what you could do is probably lose a little bit of weight, especially if you're a chunky guy, aka a bad sound. Instead of trying to make that sound better by boosting frequencies, you might opt to want to reduce, aka if you want your thing to look bigger, obviously it's better to lose weight first before you go on and get a prosthetic wee.
Alright guys, so in this example we have a preset from the new Tropical Pop Pack coming out in a couple of weeks, you could say, end of April, so it's coming soon. Just gotta get some stuff done. But as you guys can see here, we have these chords that started off. Now the sound isn't that bad, but we can modify it to sound a little bit cleaner if we wanted it to. So the first thing I need to do is find a frequency that I feel doesn't sound that great. Now keep in mind that a lot of the times when you boost a frequency and you look for them like this, they might sound bad right off the bat just because you have such a harsh boost in a centralized location, but it doesn't mean it's bad. Now the way you test this is just by decreasing. You can see a little decreasement there just cleans the whole sound up. Now a lot of people like to do this where they'll leave this and they'll just do this. And while it does sound cleaner, you're accentuating the crap out of the top on that. Which doesn't sound that good. So what we can do here is very simple. Let's lower the clap a bit. On the clap would help. Now I'm gonna write that down, but you can see that really does help. Now from there, if you feel like you need a boost, that is totally fine. So as you hear it, it sounds a lot pleasing. Just be very subtle with it. So I'll give you that, guys, there. But as you can see, decreasing helps so much rather than just going in. Now, there are going to be sounds where you have to decrease more, and there are going to be other sounds where you have to decrease less. It's all up to you to use your ears, use reference tracks to help guide you on how something needs to sound like. But just a little example here for that.
Tip number 3, guys, is going to be to use mid-side EQ to let your mono information come through more. Now, the biggest example I can give you guys of this is that when you have a song with chords and a lead in the center or in the mono of the mix, or when you have vocals. Now, you want a stereo sound, obviously, for your chords, so a lot of times you're going to widen them. The big thing here is that you're still going to have a bit of mono and center information, so that's when mid-side EQ comes into play. We don't want to cripple the whole chord and be like, well, in the mids, we need to cut a little bit on 500 hertz so the vocal pops out more, so I'm just gonna EQ that. The moment you EQ that without mid-side EQ, you're EQing the mono signal and the stereo signal of the chord, so you're pretty much crippling it in both ways. So what we can opt to use rather is gonna be a mid-side EQ where we separate the stereo signal and the mono or the center signal away from it, so that way we can just do it to the mono signal of the chords, let the lead pop through there, and you don't cripple the chords.
All right, fam, now in the example I'm about to give you, I ain't gonna lie, I overdid it. I'm overdoing it. The pad is too loud, but I want to prove a point here. So right now we have that pad, and then we have that pluck lead. So the pad by itself, now with the pluck. So how do I make this so that I can make the leads come out more? Well, my first trick is to just lower the pad volume for sure. But there's going to be times when you can't do that and it still sounds like the leads aren't coming out enough. So when that happens, the only thing left to do would be to go to MIDSIDE EQ. That's going to be one of the tools you have, one of the knowledge that you're going to obtain from this video. So first things first is we got to find out where the lead is present in the mix. So obviously it's in the center of the mix, and then the ping pong delay is on the side. So now, once I found out where it's at, I need to find out what frequencies it's literally taking up. You can see it's taking this up. So I could say on the mono signal or on the mid signal, this is being taken up by the pluck and pad. So instantly what I can do is go in with an EQ, go into my mono and stereo, or my mid and side, whatever you want to call it. Please don't comment about this. Some of you guys are just very harsh. It's not mono, it's mid. It's okay. People get the idea. So we already know around 500 hertz around this area, the lead is taking that up. So instantly I could just be like, you know what? I don't want the pad in the mids. Fuck that. So, you know, you just reduce everything there like so. And let's see. There we go. So instantly the lead pops out more. Now you could be more careful with this, obviously, and be like, yo, you know, I love what you bring to the table in my hood, go, you know, pad, you know, so I'm gonna let you keep some of your stuff in here, so I can easily be like, all right, we know around 500 hertz this clock is massive there, and then we know around here we did a boost on the clock, so it's only logical that I remove the pad from there. So notice when I turn it on, this pluck sounds a lot cleaner. It feels like it has space in the mix. So check it out. With it off, it sounds cluttered. They're fighting. They're fighting. On. There's a little bit more room for the pluck. Now, if I reduce the volume on the saw, you're going to see how nicely they just fit well together. Now if we play, now taking that shit off. It's a very small change. I'm not gonna lie, it's very small. But there's going to be times when this is accentuated to the point where you're like, man, my lead can't come out, and this will really help. Theoretically, it should help. But a lot of the times you might find like, no, this isn't working, so then you have to resort to other things. But this is one of those tips that helps a lot with vocals, with leads, with anything that's the main idea that can't seem to just pop out. So, you know, easily you could also go into the bass and be like, you know what, that area too. And just reduce there as well, but don't do it crazy like this, you know, do it strategically. But that's gonna be one of the tips, guys.
Tip number 4 that I have for you guys is to learn to use dynamic equalizers when needed. Now, it's hard for me to place this tip because it's just so useful, and the place you're gonna notice this more is gonna be when you have bass lines. Now, this tip is gonna come very handy because sometimes you're gonna have these bass lines that like to go from, let's say, the D up to the A, up to the A sharp, and you know, even up to the D2. The problem with this, as you guys have noticed, is that if the bass tends to go up, it tends to sound louder, it tends to get more resonating at times. So in order to prevent that, we can, you know, literally look at the bass line, and at the moment that we notice it gets loud, we'll pause it, we'll see what frequency is causing that, and we can add a dynamic EQ to it. So let me show you how this is gonna work, but I think this is one of the best tips we have here, because if we go with a traditional EQ, and like I said, I love all EQs, but if we go with a traditional EQ, you're always gonna be boosting that frequency that might give spark, might give life to the bass when it's not in that area. So we use a dynamic EQ to kind of say, hey, we want you to do it at this section, not here. You can also automate an EQ on, but pick your poison. Let me show you how to do this.
All right, guys, now we're getting into a little bit more of advanced stuff because we start to incorporate EQs with compression. And this is where it can get a bit intimidating. So I really suggest you have a clear understanding of compression before we go into this tip. Just know compression lowers volume, and everyone always thinks it makes shit loud. It lowers volume. It's used to tame stuff. It's used to shape stuff. It's used to calm the fuck down, little sound. You're getting too loud at certain times. Now, imagine you have an EQ that does it to the whole sound. Well, not like that, but imagine you have a compressor that does it to a specific part of the sound of a frequency when you need to, and that's where dynamic EQs play a huge role. So in this bass, I've done this shit on purpose where it goes from D up to D3, so an up an octave. So you're gonna see the resonation, that nasty ass resonation that happens. So you can hear like the switch just really messes stuff up. So first things first, we use a dynamic EQ. I'm gonna use neutron for this. So we gotta find that frequency that's causing it. So everything's fine. So you can see it's gonna be around the 1 right now, which is 220. Now theoretically you can say, well, Sen, what about this down here? Well, this is the bass, so don't worry about that. Homie got it. That's pleasing. That's like, you know, the butt, the nice part of the butt, not the nasty cellulite. This part is going to give us the cellulite. So how do we find it easily? Similar to resonating frequency. The thing is, we don't want it to be reduced the whole time. So what we're going to do is use a dynamic EQ. So we found it. We're going to reduce on it. Now we're going to turn on dynamic mode right here. Now what this is going to do is whenever this threshold is hit, well, now the EQ is allowed to decrease the volume. And the white line is going to show you what it's doing. So you can see it kind of going down, but we want this to go down even more. So let's lower threshold. And we want to do it to the point where when it hits that, we see a huge reducement. So not so much. Now it's doing like hella. So we want that to pretty much help us out. Now, if we turn it off, on, you can see the difference it makes. Now, the difference between the dynamic EQ and a normal EQ here would be the fact that the normal EQ will always be decreasing, while the dynamic EQ only decreases when the threshold is hit and how much it goes above it. So you can get harsh with it, you can get soft with it. So that's the trick here, guys. All of a sudden, boom, now you got that. So if we get rid of on. So let me repeat that part here. Off, on. So you can see it helps a lot whenever you have sounds that do that. So definitely something to have up your arsenal. The key thing here is that you know the knowledge to do it now, but the key thing is you have to realize when to use it, and that's where practice comes in handy, guys. That's what I always say. Watch tutorials, yeah, cool, but spend more time producing than watching tutorials. I promise you. Practice the stuff you learn. And when it's time to put it to the test, to use it, you will know how to characterize the problem in your song and what tools you have necessary that you learned from me to fix them. So, moving on to the next tip.
And finally, guys, the last tip I'm going to give you, and there's so many more I could get into, but they're all scattered across all my videos, so make sure to look at them. But the last tip I give you guys today that I would give to my son if I was on my dying bed, this is my best tip. This is my best EQ tip. Don't share it with the world. Now, the tip is going to be to EQ around something. Obviously, when you have a song, you have the main idea, and then you have the supportive elements. Now, it could be a bass, it could be a melody, it could be chord drops, whatever. You want to EQ around that specific main idea. So the way we do that easily is we find where the meat of the idea is, and then on everything else we're going to EQ to a certain extent, a certain limit. We don't want to overdo it either. So we're going to EQ to a certain limit where we let that sound pop out even more. That was a bomb-ass tip, yo! Alright, guys, and those are going to be the 5 tips I have for you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed them, and hopefully you learned a little bit of something, or you're just reinforced the fact that you know how to EQ already. If you guys want to follow... Alright guys, and that's gonna be all my tips for today. Hopefully one of these helps you or resonates with you. In that case, you would use tip number 2 to reduce that resonation. But as always guys, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I try and make videos daily for music production, EDM mainly. Also a little bit of funny videos here and there. It just depends how I'm feeling throughout the day. But again, make sure to subscribe. Evil Sounds right there if you're looking for some sick sound banks. And I'll see you guys next time. You guys take care, ninjas, and I'll see you tomorrow for the feedback stream, which I have every Thursdays at 8 in the morning. Peace out.